It was a warm evening in Los Angeles. The red carpet was rolled out, and photographers stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a glimpse of Hollywood's biggest stars. The premiere was for a long-awaited action film, and almost every major name in the industry was expected to attend. Fans gathered behind the barricades, hoping to catch a wave or a smile from their favorite actors. The energy was high, the lights were bright, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Then Tom Cruise arrived. He stepped out of a sleek black car, dressed in a sharp tailor's suit. As always, he smiled confidently and waved to the crowd. People cheered loudly, calling his name. He took a few moments to greet fans, signing posters and shaking hands. Tom had been in the industry for decades, and his presence still caused a stir wherever he went. Not long after, another car pulled up. This time, it was Brad Pitt. He wore a classic look, simple but stylish, and moved through the crowd with ease. The cheers grew louder. People were thrilled to see two legends of Hollywood at the same event. Brad, too, stopped to take pictures and greet fans. He seemed relaxed, even playful, as he joked with some of the photographers. Then came the moment. Tom and Brad were only a few feet apart on the carpet. Cameras pointed at them, ready to capture what would surely be a major moment. Two of the most famous actors in the world, standing side by side. But something strange happened. As Brad walked by, he gave a small nod in Tom's direction, a polite gesture, a respectful one. Tom, however, did not return it. Instead, he looked straight ahead, his expression calm but unreadable. He kept walking, asking Brad as if he hadn't noticed him at all. Those who were watching closely noticed it right away. There was no handshake, no smile, not even eye contact. Photographers caught it, fans caught it, and soon so did the media. Why didn't Tom shake Brad's hand? Was it an accident? Was he distracted? Or was there something more behind that quiet moment? People began to whisper. Some said it was nothing, just timing. Others believed it was something that had been brewing for years, something that started long ago and was never truly resolved. The rest of the night went on as planned. Both actors gave interviews, posed for photos, and greeted others at the premiere. But the tension in that small, silent moment stayed with everyone who saw it. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it said a lot. Sometimes the biggest stories begin not with words, but with silence. And for Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, that silence was louder than anything they could have said. What really happened between them? That moment left fans curious, and soon, everyone would start looking back in time to find the answer. It all began back in 1993, when Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were cast together in the film Interview with the Vampire. At the time, both actors were already famous. Tom was known for his strong roles in big action and drama films, while Brad was quickly becoming one of Hollywood's most talked about stars. The movie was a big deal. It was based on a popular book, and fans were excited to see two major actors share the screen. The story was dark and filled with emotion, and both actors had to take on challenging roles. From the outside, it looked like the perfect team-up. But behind the scenes, things weren't as smooth as they seemed. Tom and Brad had very different ways of working. Tom was known for being very focused. He liked to prepare a lot before each scene. He often stayed serious while filming, making sure every part of his performance was just right. He believed in giving his full attention to the role at all times. Brad, on the other hand, was more relaxed in his approach. He liked to keep things light on set and didn't take things too seriously between takes. He enjoyed chatting with the crew and having fun when he wasn't in front of the camera. His style was more about being natural and letting things flow. This difference started to create a quiet tension between them. On some days, they barely spoke. While filming long and emotional scenes, they would stay in their own corners. The crew noticed that the two stars never really connected. There were no big fights or loud arguments, but something was off. The respect was there, but the chemistry was missing. People who worked on the film said it felt like a silent wall had formed between the two. No one knew exactly why, but it became clear that they weren't becoming friends. It wasn't personal, at least not at first. It was simply that they didn't match as people. By the time filming ended, that distance had grown. The movie was a success, and fans loved seeing them on screen. But once the camera stopped rolling, Tom and Brad went their separate ways. They showed up for the press tour, took photos, and did interviews. But even then, their body language spoke louder than their words. They stood apart in group photos. They gave short answers when asked about working together, and they were never seen sharing a laugh or having a real conversation. No one said anything directly. There was no public statement or clear reason given. But everyone in the industry could see it. Something had happened during that film. Something small, perhaps, but strong enough to keep two stars from ever truly connecting. It was the beginning of a quiet divide that would last for years to come. After the filming of Interview with the Vampire ended, the real test began, the press tour. This was the time when actors traveled around the world to promote their movie. They sat in interviews, answered questions, and tried to show a strong team spirit. For most films, the press tour helps bring the cast closer. But for Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, it only made their distance more clear. The tour started in the United States, then moved to Europe and Asia. Everywhere they went, crowds cheered. Fans were excited to see them together. Photographers followed them from hotel lobbies to red carpets. Every moment was captured. People watched closely, hoping to see some friendly interaction between the two stars. But it didn't happen. At a press event in London, both actors sat side by side at a long table with microphones in front of them. Reporters asked questions about the movie, the filming process, and their experience working together. When one reporter asked, "How was it working with each other?" everyone leaned in, waiting for the answer. Brad gave a small smile and said, "It was an interesting project, a lot of strong energy on set." His answer was polite, but careful. He didn't say anything bad, but he didn't say anything warm either. Tom nodded slightly, then spoke about the story, the director, and the challenge of the role, but didn't mention Brad at all. It wasn't rude, but it felt distant. People noticed. Throughout the tour, their behavior stayed the same. They showed up on time, acted professional, and did what was needed. But they never seemed close. No shared jokes, no side conversations, and no real connection. In group photos, they stood apart. During interviews, they focused on the film, not each other. Behind the scenes, things weren't much different. According to someone on the tour team, the two actors traveled separately and stayed in different hotels when possible. They had their own teams, their own schedules, and rarely crossed paths unless required. One moment during the Japan leg of the tour stood out. A fan event was held where Tom and Brad were supposed to greet the crowd together. Tom arrived first and gave a long, friendly talk to the audience. When Brad came out a few minutes later, Tom stepped aside but didn't speak. They stood just feet apart on stage, both smiling to the fans, but never looking at each other. It was quiet, but the tension was there. People could feel it, even without words. By the time the press tour ended, the silence between them had become part of the story. Fans still loved the movie, but many were left wondering why two of Hollywood's biggest stars couldn't seem to get along. No one gave a clear answer, but after that tour, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt would never work together again, and the distance between them only grew with time. As the years passed, rumors about the distance between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt began to grow. What had started as a quiet tension on the set of Interview with the Vampire seemed to evolve into something more complicated. While their acting styles and personalities were already different, there was something else that might have played a part in their divide, a deeper difference in their beliefs and values. Tom Cruise, by this point, was very open about his commitment to Scientology, a religion he had been involved in for years. Scientology was a big part of his life, and he often talked about it in interviews, sharing how it helped him focus and understand the world. His passion for the religion was undeniable, and he seemed to wear his beliefs as a part of his identity. It was clear to those around him that Scientology was not just something he practiced, it shaped his approach to life and work. Brad Pitt, on the other hand, had a much more laid-back and secular approach to life. He had been open in interviews about his personal views, which leaned towards introspection, philosophy, and the exploration of different ideas. While he wasn't outspoken about religion, he valued his freedom to think critically and independently. He often avoided discussing deeply personal matters in public, preferring to keep his beliefs private and to focus more on personal growth and experiences. According to those who worked with him, A particular incident during the filming of Interview with the Vampire revealed just how strongly their views clashed. One evening, after a long day of filming, the cast and crew sat down for dinner. What started as a casual conversation quickly turned into a heated debate about religion and life. Brad, who was known for his thoughtful and philosophical nature, began discussing his views on spirituality and the meaning of life. Tom, ever passionate about Scientology, responded with firm opinions of his own, defending his beliefs. The conversation became more intense as they disagreed about fundamental ideas. Those present at the dinner could sense the discomfort between them. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a clash of worldviews. Brad, who enjoyed open-minded discussions, found it hard to connect with someone so sure of their beliefs. Tom, on the other hand, seemed frustrated by Brad's more relaxed, questioning approach to life. The tension from that night lingered, adding fuel to the distance that had already been growing. For Brad, the conversation was a reminder of how different they were, and how hard it was to see eye to eye with someone so deeply committed to a belief system that he didn't fully understand. For Tom, it may have felt like a challenge to his personal philosophy, something he wasn't willing to let go of. This philosophical clash, combined with their differences in working styles, created a wall that neither actor seemed eager to break down. The divide wasn't about dislike. It was about a fundamental difference in how they saw the world. And as time went on, this divide became harder to ignore. While the public never fully understood what had caused the rift, those who worked closely with them knew that it wasn't just about acting. It was about two people with very different ways of thinking and living, and how those differences shaped their relationship, if there ever truly was one. After the press tour ended, the stories about Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt seemed to fade into the background. But for those who worked in Hollywood, the unspoken tension between the two stars was always there. In the years that followed, their paths rarely crossed. Both men continued to rise in their careers, achieving even greater success, yet they never seemed to share the screen again. It was as if a quiet agreement had been made between them, one that kept their professional lives separate. As their careers went in different directions, there was little public discussion about the reason they had never worked together again. For the most part, it seemed like a simple coincidence, but for those who knew the details, it was more than that. Tom and Brad, despite their fame, had become two actors whose careers followed different trajectories. The films they took on were different, the roles they chose were different, and the type of people they surrounded themselves with was different. It wasn't just about avoiding each other, it was about a choice. In an industry where actors often find themselves reunited in sequels or similar roles, Tom and Brad never seemed to cross paths again. Despite their shared history in Hollywood, neither one of them appeared interested in revisiting it. And as years passed, the silence between them only grew louder. Fans, of course, speculated. Some believed it was personal, others saw it as professional. But no one ever got a clear answer. The two men were simply not a part of each other's world anymore. Behind closed doors, people in the industry began to whisper about their rift. There were rumors that Tom was frustrated with the way Brad's career was taking shape. Brad was becoming known for his more relaxed, less traditional roles, while Tom continued to focus on blockbuster action films. Their choices made it seem as though their professional paths had become too far apart. It was as if their work had grown so different that the idea of collaborating again seemed impossible. In 2007, a big film project was pitched that seemed perfect for both of them. It was a thriller with two strong male leads. The producer behind the project was hopeful that they would both sign on. However, Tom's team turned it down. They said it was because of scheduling conflicts, but the producer, who had worked with both actors in the past, couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the decision. Brad, for his part, didn't seem upset about it. He moved on, taking on a different set of roles that pushed him further into a more mature, artistic direction. After that, any chance of seeing them together on screen seemed to fade. Tom continued to take on roles that kept him in the action hero spotlight, while Brad embraced a more diverse career path, choosing films that allowed him to explore different kinds of characters. It was clear that they had moved on from their shared past and had no interest in revisiting it. The quiet years that followed were filled with separate successes, but also a sense that something important had been left behind. By the time 2019 came around, it became even clearer. Both actors were at the peak of their careers, but there were no signs that they would ever work together again. Fans still loved them both, but the possibility of seeing them together on screen seemed more unlikely than ever. What had started as an uncomfortable moment on set years ago had turned into a full-blown silence that neither seemed eager to break. And in many ways, that silence became a part of their legacy. For years, Hollywood watched as Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt continued their separate paths. On the surface, everything seemed fine. Both men remained successful, each with a strong fan base and an impressive list of films. But behind the glitz and glamour, something else was happening. Whispers began to spread in the industry. People who worked with them knew the two had never fully resolved whatever had happened between them during the interview with the Vampire Days. According to insiders, the real reason for the distance between Tom and Brad wasn't something that could be fixed with a handshake or a public apology. It was about their personalities, their beliefs, and the way they viewed the world. It wasn't a simple disagreement. It was a clash of worldviews that had lingered far beyond the set of that film. Those who had worked with them on Interview with the Vampire said that, although the film was a success, the set was often tense. It wasn't always obvious to the public, but behind the scenes, it was clear that the two men were not exactly friends. They weren't openly hostile, but the chemistry everyone expected to see between them just wasn't there. In fact, some crew members even said that Brad and Tom barely spoke to each other during breaks. They kept to themselves, working in their own spaces, rarely sharing a laugh or engaging in casual conversation. It wasn't the environment you would expect from a cast that was supposed to be creating a strong bond for such an iconic film. What many didn't know was that the tension between them wasn't just about acting styles or personal preferences. It was about their deeply different philosophies. Tom's dedication to Scientology had been well known for years, and those close to him knew how important the religion was in shaping his life. He was often seen as someone who lived by strict principles, carefully controlling his image and making sure everything in his life was aligned with his beliefs. Brad, on the other hand, was far more laid back. He didn't follow any particular set of beliefs with the same intensity that Tom did. While he was interested in personal growth, spirituality, and learning, he didn't tie himself to a specific philosophy or religious practice. This difference caused tension between them, especially when the topic of religion or life choices came up during filming. Some crew members even recalled a dinner where the two had a heated debate about religion, with Tom defending his faith passionately, while Brad took a more open, questioning approach. The conversation, they said, became uncomfortable, with both men clearly unable to see eye to eye. After that night, the divide between them seemed to grow. Both stars, already strong personalities in their own right, became even more distant. Tom remained focused on his career and his beliefs, while Brad pursued a wider range of roles, taking on more creative and introspective parts. Their careers continued to thrive, but in very different directions. While fans continued to love both actors, the silence between them grew louder in the industry. The few times they were seen in the same room, the tension was palpable. It was clear that they had made a quiet decision to avoid each other, and the reasons behind that decision were known only to those close to them. What had started as a small issue on set had transformed into a long-standing, unspoken divide. And as the years went on, it seemed less and less likely that the two would ever reconnect, personally or professionally. By 2021, it seemed as if the divide between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt had become an unspoken part of their legacy. The two actors, once the brightest stars in Hollywood, were now focused on their own paths. Tom had continued with his blockbuster action roles, most famously in the Mission: Impossible series, while Brad had embraced more diverse creative roles, even producing his own films. Both men were at the top of their game, yet their paths rarely crossed, and their shared history seemed more like a distant memory. But in an unexpected twist, it was an event that no one saw coming that brought them back into the same room. It was the 2021 Golden Globe Awards, a night that promised to bring Hollywood's brightest stars together once again. The event was going to be different due to the ongoing global situation, but the excitement was still palpable. Tom and Brad, both nominated for their performances, found themselves invited to the same table. The night started like any other. Guests mingled, sipped on champagne, and chatted about their latest projects. Cameras flashed as the stars took their seats. Each actor focused on the awards they were nominated for. For a brief moment, Tom and Brad's names appeared on the same page of the program. The two men who hadn't shared a public moment in over a decade were now about to be in the same room again. As the evening went on, both actors appeared to be enjoying themselves, though their body language remained distant. Tom sat with his team, exchanging words with colleagues he had worked with for years. Brad, on the other hand, appeared more relaxed, chatting with a few fellow actors nearby. No one thought much of it at first, believing that the years of silence between them had made any potential conversation difficult. Then, as the evening drew to a close, something happened that no one could have predicted. The announcement for the Best Actor award came. Both Tom and Brad were nominated in the same category, which added an extra layer of tension to the already formal atmosphere. The audience waited in anticipation, and the camera panned to the two men. Their eyes met for just a brief moment, and then something shifted. It wasn't a handshake or a dramatic moment, but the look in their eyes seemed to convey something unspoken. A recognition, perhaps. Maybe a shared understanding of how far they had both come since those early days. When the winner was announced, Brad Pitt. It wasn't the typical celebratory scene. Brad stood up, accepting the award with his usual charm and grace. As he walked up to the stage, he paused for a second, looking directly at Tom. With a simple nod, he acknowledged him. It wasn't grand or over the top, but it was clear that there was no more tension in that small gesture. The years of silence had somehow broken, even if only for a brief moment. The audience was buzzing. They knew this moment was significant, though they couldn't quite explain why. It wasn't a full reunion, but it was a start, and for the first time in years, it seemed like the quiet divide between these two Hollywood icons had finally loosened, just a little. As Brad delivered his speech, Tom watched from his seat, a small smile on his face. They hadn't spoken in years, but in that moment, it was clear that there was no longer any animosity. Whatever had happened in the past, it was time to move on. After the Golden Globe moment in 2021, things between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt seemed to shift, if only slightly. The brief interaction at the awards ceremony had left a lasting impression on both men. Though the world didn't witness a grand reconciliation, those who had seen the exchange knew something had changed. The years of silence were not suddenly erased, but there was now a sense of mutual respect between the two actors. In the following months, the media buzzed with questions about the brief exchange at the Golden Globes. While neither Tom nor Brad directly commented on it, the public couldn't help but speculate. Some believed that the tension between the two had finally eased, while others thought that they had simply moved on from the past. Regardless of the truth, one thing was clear. They no longer seemed interested in maintaining a distance. The quiet divide that had separated them for so many years was now a thing of the past, at least in a professional sense. In the years that followed, Tom and Brad continued their separate careers. Tom remained dedicated to his action-packed roles, with Mission: Impossible films continuing to draw large audiences worldwide. Brad, on the other hand, took on a variety of roles, both in front of the camera and behind it as a producer. His work focused on films that explored deeper themes and allowed him to experiment with different characters. Though their paths didn't cross often, when they did, there was a sense of mutual acknowledgement. At industry events, they would occasionally share a brief conversation or a simple nod of the head, acknowledging the other's success. There were no long discussions or public displays of friendship, but it was clear that the past had been left behind. They were both mature, focused on their own careers, and no longer caught up in the drama that once divided them. As the years continued, both actors faced their own personal challenges and triumphs. Tom, who had long been known for his intense focus and commitment to his craft, continued to work hard, pushing the limits of what was possible in his films. Brad, ever the more introspective of the two, took on roles that challenged him emotionally and allowed him to explore the complexities of human nature. Both men had become icons, each in their own right, and each with a unique journey in Hollywood. While a direct collaboration between them remained unlikely, the possibility of it was no longer entirely off the table. Neither actor seemed eager to rehash old issues, and as time passed, the idea of working together again was no longer a question of unresolved tension. It was simply about the right opportunity. Perhaps one day they would find themselves sharing the screen once again, but if that moment ever arrived, it would be on their own terms, with no baggage from the past. As they continued on their separate paths, it was clear that the story of Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt was far from over. It wasn't about rivalry anymore. It was about respect, maturity, and the understanding that sometimes even the longest divides can be bridged quietly over time.